I think what James is really pointing out here is does anybody remember like the first Mission Impossible movie where they're like trying to break into somewhere and they got that camera that's like doing this, going back and forward, and they figure out how to run through the building where the camera never sees them because when they're running over here when it's over there, and then they're running over here when it's over there, and they're just evading all of the footage. This will never happen with this sort of camera. This absolutely prevents this sort of problem.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the In the Trenches Roundtable. Today is a product-focused episode. Excited to jump in this one. We're going to be covering the Watchkeeper Dual Vision. So of course we have our awesome panel of experts with us again today.
Howdy. Hey everybody.
Excited for them to be joining us. And we're going to break down the video like this. We're first going to cover what even is a dual vision Watchkeeper. We're then going to talk about who should be interested in this type of a product. Then we'll cover some placement and use cases because it's a little bit unique. And then we'll get our panel's final thoughts on this camera specific product. Let's jump in. So section one, what is a Watchkeeper Dual Vision? Who wants to take it?
Yeah, I can take that one. So if you're not familiar with our already very popular Watchkeeper PTZ, it's kind of a medium-sized commercial grade PTZ. It's got long-range lenses, long-range IR, and it's an awesome camera. And basically, we made it better. We added a fixed lens camera right on the top of it there, which comes in handy for a lot of situations we're going to talk about. But it allows you to capture both a wider image and use the PTZ to get details. And we'll cover more in terms of how that all works, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Gotcha. So if I'm understanding, you're saying it's fixed lens in combination with a PTZ. Are these two different cameras or what?
It's like we duct taped the fixed lens camera on top of it.
Yes.
No, it's not duct taped, but yeah, it's one camera, and yeah, it's even one cable. So
Interesting.
Sort of one device with two lenses.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I like that. That's a better way of saying it.
better than duct tape, yeah.
I'm following. I think I'm following, duct tape or not. But why a fixed lens? Like, why are we adding on a fixed lens to the PTZ?
Well, it's a wide angle fixed lens, so it's the one camera that is not going to move. It's going to be looking over the area, and then if you need more detail or if you want to get closer in on something, you can use the PTZ for that portion of it.
So basically what you're saying is sort of the construction of the device, the PTZ still moves, but the fixed lens camera is going to stay pointing exactly where you mounted the camera. And so you've got a sort of stable view, and then you can zoom around, but you're no longer worried that like when I zoom in and go look at that license plate over here, I've somehow missed what's happening around me.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So yeah, this really solves one of the biggest pains, it sounds like, about PTZs.
Oh yeah, whatever the PTZ is not looking at, you have no idea what's going on.
You're not recording it. It's optical zoom. So when you zoom in and instead of seeing this big screen of us and you only see this little tiny section over here, you're not recording any of this stuff that's happening out of the frame. So
Gotcha.
it solves that particular problem.
Yep.
Gotcha. I'm following. But James, you mentioned something a minute ago I want to circle back to. You said I think you said it only takes one camera or one cable?
Yeah, so even though it's got essentially two cameras on it, it's got the PTZ and then the fixed lens, it actually only uses one cable, which is another really great feature of this because a lot of people try to replicate something like this already, and that's kind of something we've been preaching for a while. If you got a PTZ, you sort of need an overlook camera to, not just cover the area that the PTZ is not looking at the time. We've been kind of talking about that for quite a while. And that requires, running two cables or anything like that. With this camera, you only got one cable, which is going to reduce your labor and installation time quite a bit. So it's another advantage of this model.
Sure. So two lenses, one cable, but how many channels does it take up on the NVR?
It'll take up two. Yeah, each camera will be its own channel on the recorder.
Yeah, you still have different video feeds. You've got two video feeds coming out. They're being recorded on different channels. You're going to search in one of them to display one of them, and then pull footage from one of them. or both of them if you wanted to, but
Are there any other differences between this Watchkeeper, the dual vision one, and the normal Watchkeeper that we should know about?
I think the
Besides, of
first
course,
one,
the dual lenses.
yeah, I think the first one comes to mind is, our regular Watchkeeper is all infrared night vision, which means you sort of get a black and white image. On this, because we've got two separate cameras essentially into one package, we've got white light built into the fixed lens cameras, gives about 100 feet of white light around the area. So even at night, you should be getting a color image out of that fixed lens. And then the PTZ still has that long range 300 feet of infrared coverage. So that's definitely a unique feature on that one too, in terms of, if you need to see things like color at night, this is a really great option.
It's good to know. All right, great. Then we'll move on to section 2, which will cover like who should be interested in this camera or product. Anybody want to start off by taking that?
I want one.
Yeah. Nice.
I mean,
You get a
I'll start
Watchkeeper
off.
Dual Vision. You get a Watchkeeper Dual Vision. You get a one.
Anybody with I think a parking lot would be the one that sort of jumps out to me. Anytime you have a parking lot. So what's one of the biggest uses for a PTZ? I want to zoom in on a license plate. And let's take like a use case, like somebody has stolen something and they're in your parking lot and they're going to their car and you're trying to zoom in on, the license plate. You want to be able to identify who this is so you can make a police report. But now you're not watching what they're doing while they're going to their car. So, or in another case, like let's say they get in the car and they start driving away, you're trying to zoom in on the license plate. What if they're doing some other crime? Damaging additional vehicles on the way out, or getting into a fight with somebody. There's this potential to sort of miss the greater context when you zoom in on a detail. And that's most common, I think, in a parking lot where you want to zoom in on that PTZ, get a really great shot, or zoom in on that license plate, get a really great shot of the license plate. But it is true in any instance where you're going to zoom in to that degree. So you get a big indoor space, colleges, universities, stadiums. You want to zoom in on a person who is causing a problem. Well, what are you seeing around them? Not as much anymore. So you've got this need to like still be able to follow what's happening around you, and not lose your situational awareness while also zooming in on detail.
Yeah, I think I'd break that down almost like the fixed lens provides context. So that's going to be sort of the entire scene. PTZ can provide detail. I think another one very similar to parking lots in a lot of ways is a car dealership. This has been a very popular camera for our car dealership customers because they can have the wider look at their parking lot and then use the PTZ to look at entranceways, or hotspot areas where they know they've had issues, or even places where maybe their more valuable cars are, and get both, again, that context, the scene from start to finish usually, and then details. So car dealerships are definitely probably one of our most popular ones so far for this model for that reason.
And schools too, especially like those drop-off areas. You're getting a wide view of where everybody's going into a vehicle or out of a vehicle. But then if you need to, you can also get up close on a license plate if need be and stuff like that.
I think with the
Also-
PTZ too, sorry, one thing with the PTZ I would say too, you don't necessarily have to zoom it in 300 feet away or anything like that. Sometimes just, the object might be 50 to 100 feet away and you just need more detail. Like, I
Yep.
mean, the one that they have issues with dumpsters and the dumpster is 75, 100 feet away, but they really want good detail when somebody's near that dumpster. And so
Yep.
they're not necessarily needing to focus on the most tiny detail there. They're just using that additional PTZ as almost like a very flexible zoom lens in a lot of ways. You might not even be using the PTZ functions in some cases of it. They kind of stick it and forget it, and then it's just a flexible zoom lens option. And of course, they can decide to move it whenever they want to. But that's another thing to consider with any industry.
I was just going to say that we were working with a scrapyard a couple months ago, and they, have a building and then a very big scrapyard, but they wanted a camera to zoom in on their scales. And the place that they were going to mount the camera to zoom in on the scales was a place that already a camera was to cover the side of the building, right? And they didn't want to have too many cameras hanging off that same corner of the building for structural reasons. And so they're actually able to replace the one fixed lens with this dual vision Watchkeeper and kind of were able to get both jobs done with just a single camera. So a good example of that kind of being a use case there, right?
Yeah, I would bring up another use case as well. Anytime where you have more than one operator that is potentially using the PTZ, you can have sort of conflicts. Like, let's say that, Ben and I are both security operators for a big manufacturer, and we're having a security threat. There's the potential that we both try to control the PTZ at the same time and don't get what we want. There's the potential that Ben was controlling the PTZ and pointed it to follow, somebody to the left, and now somebody's going to the right. There are, in fact, two people. There's a bunch of like scenarios like that where having multiple operators can be great in a security environment, but can also have some challenges. And this solves one of those challenges in the same way that it solves that sort of challenge if there's two assailants and you didn't know about the second one yet. That greater context is really helpful in these sort of scenarios.
So that I think this is actually a pretty good segue into section 3, which is placement and use cases of this type of camera, right? And we've covered a few, but
Yeah.
did anyone want to cover any other specific use cases?
Yeah, I can even talk about how we use it here at SW at our headquarters. So we've got the Watchkeeper Dual Vision that's sort of looking over our greater area of our parking lot. The fixed lens is seeing, the parking lot area, and then usually we have our PTZ kind of focused down the entranceway, so in the exit way. So when vehicles come and go, we can tell who's coming, who's going, and even get license plates off of them as they exit for us too. So that allows us to kind of both get the greater context of our parking lot in case anybody goes and tries to, break into a car or something like that, or anything that could potentially happen with the cars as they're kind of parked. And then, the PTZ allows us to get identifiable details. So that's just one that comes to my mind straight up.
Definitely. And have no fear too. You don't have to be a rocket science or a network specialist to be able to configure this stuff. Michael and his team are more than happy to help any step along the way. So
Absolutely.
I think you can give us a call because this is a unique camera, right? So this is kind of a new concept within the industry. I think this will be in maybe 5 years, all PTZs will sort of have something like this, maybe, or at least most of them, I think. But I think this is a new concept. So if you're kind of planning out what's the best way of securing my facility with these, talk to us. We'll walk you through like where you'd place it, how you'd kind of set that up, what's realistic, what's not realistic for that too. Now, you don't want to bite off too much with one camera still, but this obviously gives you more flexibility potentially than any PTZ we've ever sold before. So
Yeah. And there's a little bit of manual setup with this, with it being 2 channels out of 1 cable. So, support is always here to help get that set up for those who don't necessarily understand what that means, or if they just need help them to get in the right direction. We're here to help out with that.
definitely. Was there anything else that we wanted to cover during this section here in placement and use cases of the camera?
yeah, I think one I would bring up again too is our PTZs can also be put on something called a patrol, which means that it kind of can move across the facility, and you could do it to where it's panning across the parking lot and maybe zooming in on different areas, and it just kind of is doing that all day. Now, one of the problems with doing that on a traditional PTZ is that if you're looking over here again and the incident happens over here and you just don't capture on the PTZ, you didn't capture it, right? The advantage here is that, again, you've got that fixed lens context camera. So even if by chance, like it's going over here, you kind of get their face on this one, and then it goes over here, and then they smash the car while it's pointing over here just by chance, right? You've already got the scene because you're gonna see them smashing the car in the fixed lens one most likely, and then you've already got their face from the PTZ. So you can again combine those two pieces of evidence, and have a very good look at who did it, what they did, and from start to finish, usually with the fixed lens and PTZ aspect. So being able to do that again makes patrols a lot more useful than they were before. I think for the most part, we put a lot of caveats on patrols for that very reason. But now that we have sort of 2 cameras built into one, it's again a lot more feasible as a solution in some cases. So.
I think what James is really pointing out here is does anybody remember like the first Mission Impossible movie where they're like trying to break into somewhere and they got that camera that's like doing this, going back and forward, and they figure out how to run through the building where the camera never sees them, because when they're running over here when it's over there, and then they're running over here when it's over there, and they're just evading all of the footage. This will never happen with this sort of camera. This absolutely prevents this sort of problem. And so when you have a patrol that's moving back and forward, it's never going to appear like nothing is happening because somebody timed their movements for the way that it's moving. You know, or anything even more accidental than that. Accidental stuff like that happens all the time. I mean, you have times where when you have multiple operators where one person points it at the left and looks at the stairway and totally forgets to move it back. And you've got, you know, zoomed in on trash can for, you know, 3 months. Like we've all seen that on somebody's surveillance system where they forgot to put it back in home position.
Yeah.
You know, and
Your-
so
your
this
move,
is
Tom
absolutely
Cruise.
gonna this is absolutely gonna solve this sort of problem. And it's a great camera for dealing with that sort of issue.
I think one that just popped in my mind while you were mentioning that is one question we get, especially for huge areas. I think one was like a solar farm we were working with, and you know they didn't have the budget necessarily to put cameras at every single instance where they should have, with you know like the fencing area and everything like that. You know, and patrols were sort of part of that conversation as a potential solution to kind of get around that, and kind of overlapping PTZs. So when they kind of were moving left and right, there was literally very few gaps in that coverage. This would take another level because you would have like the longer range with the PTZs, you know, covering that fence area, and then the fixed lens pointed that way too could get them if they end up going over that fence too. So you have like almost 2 layers of perimeter defense with a camera like this as well. That would be a really good solution for something like that these days.
And 2 layers of defense in one device and only one cable you've got to run.
Yep.
You know, so this is a really economical solution for both of those layers of defense.
That's kind of my last one I can think of at the moment, but I'm sure it's limitless. Let us know if you have ideas.
Definitely. Absolutely. So that'll push us right to the final section, which is our final thoughts. I don't know if there's a certain order you all want to go in. Don't please jump all at once, but let's go through final thoughts on the Dual Vision Watchkeeper.
Yeah, I'll go. I think it's a great solution for a lot of people. I've always thought to look at a PTZ as an add-on to your system. So, you know, have your fixed lens cameras and just add a PTZ into your fixed lens setup. This kind of takes care of both of that. So you got the fixed lens already there, you got the PTZ already there. It's done. Just remember it takes 2 channels. So
Yeah, I'll add one last thing to it too is, you know, that one cable, don't sleep on that part. We know like if you're looking to either install it yourself or you're getting professional installation, you know, labor prices are higher than they've ever been. And sometimes even getting the help to this is something we hear from our customers quite a bit, even getting the help to run the cables is more difficult than it's ever been. And so this allows you to, you know, reduce the labor costs. You're only running one cable, of course, but also it takes less time to get this installation up and running. You want your system up and running as soon as possible instead of having to run 2 cameras and set up 2 cameras and everything. You know, you're setting up one, and so that's something I would definitely emphasize as well. So
nice.
An awesome all-purpose and specialized camera all in one, right?
Yep.
Love it. Heck yeah. And that'll wrap us up for the Dual Vision Watchkeeper product focused episode for this week's In the Trenches. Thanks so much for joining. If you made it to this part in the video, thanks for sticking through us the entire way. Make sure to check out all the links in the description below. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, make sure to reach out to us as well. All of our contact info will be down there. And until next time, thanks so much for tuning in again, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.